In my last video I turned Snake into a 3D horror game, which a lot of people seem to like, with one person saying that I should make the first level of Mario. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. Now, if you have played Mario before, which I assume everyone has at this point, you might have noticed that Mario can, move around. So I used a character controller from one of my other games and now there's a bean that moves around. I also made a footstep detection system to play different footsteps on different surfaces. But for this game we will only be using one, since the entire level is the same surface. Now in reality Mario is not a bean, so I started making the 3D model for Mario because this is probably one of the hardest models to make in this game. In Blender, I decided to use a different method of making a character than I normally would. And I decided to use a modifier called the skin modifier. Which I thought was a mistake at first because I ended up on some sort of alien looking creature and then I don't even know what to call this. Eventually I got a base shape which with a lot of imagination started to look like Mario. And yes, before someone is going to mention it, I know he has 4 fingers. But at this point I lost way too many brain cells making this model. One advantage of the skin modifier is that it can automatically generate an armature, which basically moves the bones around and makes it easier when animating the model. Now, in most countries it is illegal to run around naked. So I started to work on the suit and the accessories. To top it off, I made his massive nose and iconic mustache, and of course we can't forget his hat. Just don't remove his head because... After that traumatic event I started making the textures. I used a color ID map so that I can give each part of the character its own individual texture. And yes, he is still clad.
Look at the top of his head!
Now it is finally time to connect the Mario model with the character controller. Yeah, right, I'm pretty sure this is not how Mario moves in the original games. So that means we need to make some animations. And let me tell you, this did not go smoothly because I literally spent an hour making this animation that somehow played in -5 FPS after I changed the setting. Like, how does this even happen? So eventually I ended up on this simple animation which took me 2 minutes to make. Then I also made a jump animation and a idle animation. Now there is one issue. When the player is moving, the run animation looks absolutely great, but the animation keeps playing even when jumping or standing still. So I used Unity's animator tool to smoothly transition between the different animations with a boolean. And as a result, it now plays the correct animations. Now at this moment I only have first person movement, which, don't get me wrong, looks very nice with the model and animations, but I made it so that you can also change to third person mode. Now it is nice that Mario is done, however this does not look like a Mario game quite yet. So it is time to make the entire level. Yeah, this is going to take a while. For the blocks I wanted them to look a bit distorted or damaged. But each time I tried, it messed up the UV map and it just looked weird. So I spent all this time only to end up with the default Blender cube. And for the textures, I just used the textures from the original game and modified it slightly with some damage. Now this is a 3D game, but it still feels a bit like 2D since you can only walk in 2 directions. So I just made the level wider. After that I made the remaining blocks using the same texturing method as before. For the pipe I just used the model from my Flappy Bird game because these pipes are kind of the same anyways. Now that I made most of the blocks and assets, I can make the entire level using this layout. But that is when I ran into a problem. You see, because I made the level wider, you could just walk around the stairs. So I came up with a genius solution to just make the stairs wider. Anyways, I placed the remaining pipes and that meant that most of the top area is done. Now I imported everything to Unity to see how it looks, but I didn't like how there was just an empty void besides the level. So I started sculpting a terrain and made a dirt texture for it. Now it still looks empty, so to fix that I made this tree model and scattered it around the scene. Now the level looks pretty nice so far, but we can't forget about the cave area underneath the level. I took the floor and brick textures and made a blue version of it. Then I could again use the layout to build the area. Now, because the cave is underneath the actual level and terrain, you can still look into the void. So to fix that, I made a weird sphere model and made a cave texture for it. Now, in the original Mario games, you finish the level by reaching the castle at the end. And as you can see, I don't have a castle yet. So let's fix that. To make the castle, I used the brick block from before and made a circle pattern. And for a 3D version of the castle, I think it looks pretty good. Not only do we need the castle, but Mario actually jumps on a flag first. So I also made this flagpole in front of the castle. After the flagpole and what felt like forever, I made the entire level layout, which in 3D looks kind of satisfying for some reason. I imported the environment from Blender to Unity and it looks nice, but there is one issue. You see, right now I can just walk through each object. So I added colliders and now we can walk around the entire level. Also, to give the game a darker feeling, I added a skybox, different lighting and some post-processing with a pixelation effect. But the biggest game changer was the volumetric lighting, which creates these light beam rays when you look through the trees. And I absolutely love this effect. Finally, I also made the pipes wider just like the stairs and now the environment is actually done. But remember this terrain I made earlier? Yeah, the player can just walk on it and skip the entire level. I don't want the player to wander off and skip the level, but I also don't want to add an invisible wall. So I made it when you go into the forest, a white cube gets spawned and starts chasing you. But obviously a white cube is not scary at all. So I made this horror version of Mario.
The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night.
And created a jump scare for when he catches you. Now it is cool that we have the entire level, but right now it is literally a walk in the park, or in this case a forest. So we need to add some items. I made it so that the item blocks cycle through different textures, to create the effect like in the original game. And when you jump into it, it quickly goes up and down and the texture changes to an empty block. Now for the actual items, I started with the mushroom. I made this model in Blender and I made a texture for it in Substance Painter. I also turned the flower into a 3D version. But for this item I also needed multiple textures just like the item block. And finally I made the star model with some textures, which I again had to make multiple of to create a cycle. Then back in Unity I made it so that the correct items get spawned on top of an item block when you touch it. And for each item I had to write some code for their behavior. For example, the mushroom moves until it touches something, the flower just stands still and the star bounces around. But something is not adding up, because right now Mario is pretty big, but he needs to start off small. So I made it when Mario interacts with the mushroom, he gets increasingly bigger over time. For the flower item, I made a different Mario version with a white suit. And I also made this fireball model. So when you pick up the flower item, the Mario texture changes and you can shoot fireballs. And last but definitely not least, for the star, well, I just show you. Yeah, I definitely need to tone this down. Now it is nice that we have all of the items, however, it doesn't make sense to have items if there are no enemies. I started with the Goomba and I used the same method when I made the Mario model, with the skin modifier. I landed on this base shape and started using my sculpting skills to make the mouth and eyes, which already looks absolutely terrifying. Then I started sculpting some cracks to make it look more disturbing. After that I made the other details such as the feet, eyebrows and his teeth. Last but not least, to make the Goomba even more terrifying, I made these holes in his head with some bones sticking out. I exported everything to Substance Painter to make some textures for the Goomba, and I don't want to see this thing in my sleep. Now besides the Goomba there is one more enemy, and that is the Koopa Troopa, which for some reason already looks scary in 2D, especially if you compare it with the newer ones. I started off with the shell because I figured this would be the hardest part of the model, but I liked how it turned out. Then I made his neck, and a block out of his face and started sculpting the face to make it look more natural. After that I modeled his feet and again I started sculpting to add some realism. And I am really happy with the textures and final result, so it is time to throw them into Unity. For both the Goomba and Koopa Troopa I made a running and idle animation. Now in the original games the Goomba walks around and just waits until it crashes into something. I decided to make him a little different. The Goomba hides under the ground and when the player is close enough it calls up and starts to charge towards the player. How it works is the Goomba saves the position of the player and runs really fast towards it. Then it saves the new position and repeats this process until he dies. And when he dies, he gets crushed like in the original game. For the Koopa Troopa I also decided to make it different from the original game, because the green Koopa Troopa is usually not very smart. The Koopa Troopa roams around in a certain area until the player enters that area, then the Koopa Troopa starts chasing. Which is terrifying because he doesn't give up. When you jump on top of the Koopa Troopa, he goes back in the shell and the shell starts spinning and moving very fast. Also I made some jump scares for when you get caught by the Goomba or Koopa Troopa. Now we have two enemies, but I decided to add one more enemy, and for that I brought back the evil Mario. I made it so that the evil Mario can suddenly appear and you need to look away very fast because otherwise you will get caught.
Hi, how are you?
Also remember this cave area that I made before? There is currently no way to get to that area. So I wrote some code so that you can go into the pipe towards the cave. Oh, my bad. Okay, that's better. And of course, you can also exit the cave area with a pipe. Oh, and as you can see, I also made these spinning coins which you can pick up. Now, because I made the fireball and star item, I also made it so that you can instantly defeat the enemies with it. When you hit the enemy, it flips upside down and falls through the ground like in the original game. Obviously, we also need to add some sound. Luckily, I can use all of the sound effects from the Mario games which I found on this website. And no, I don't want to play my own. I also had to make some other sound effects for the ambience, enemies, and jump scare, which is a combination of the Mario sound effects and my own. And I almost forgot to add this, but I made it so that if you are small you can only bump into the brick blocks, but if you are big you can actually break them, and I also made this particle for it. To top it off, I made it so that if you reach the end, the flag goes down and you automatically walk to the castle. Okay, let's see what this game is really about. First off, I'm gonna defeat this Goomba right here. Just like that. I'm gonna take the shroom. There it is. Let's go. I don't think I have to explain why I won't be uploading this game online, because, you know, of a certain company. Also, I really underestimated how long this would take. Like, to make the video and the game itself, it took such a long time, especially for a game that I can't even upload online. But you know, it's fine. And I also forgot where the flower is. I think it's up here. Yeah, I think it is. Let's take this Goomba first. Oh my fuck. I forgot I put it there. Oh, I actually forgot. But it doesn't matter, we have the flower now, which is such OP. Oh, there it is. Let's go. There is the Goomba. Wait, oh my god. Jesus Christ. Oh, I killed the Goomba, I think. Oh, yeah, I didn't. Oh. Now it's gone. See what else we got. Another Goomba. Oh, another one. Jesus. Another Goomba for the end. And then you can peacefully... Oh my god. Hell no. Okay, we are back. Oh. Let's jump correct this time. I mean, yes. Let's go. Let's go. Okay, this time we are going to take the pipe and basically skip the entire level. Dog. Okay, let's pick some coins. Exit the pipe. And we skip the entire level. That's cool. Yeah, that's it. We made it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching until the end, and until the next one.